Warning, this episode may contain disturbing content, soothing narration, and mild existential dread. Basically, murder ASMR for stressed professionals. Listener discretion is advised. Hell, it might be necessary.
Doubt. It's a quiet thing. A subtle shift in the back of your mind. That sense that something isn't right, that something was missed or overlooked or intentionally hidden. In any investigation, there's always a version of events that seems to make sense. A story that fits, at least on the surface. But those stories often carry cracks, small details that don't quite line up, inconsistencies that are easy to ignore until they aren't. And when you start pulling on those threads, what once felt like answers can quickly unravel back into questions. When Joey Lynn Offutt's house burned, there was no shortage of things that didn't make sense. 2 separate fires in the home. Her infant son found deceased in an upstairs bathtub, and Joey herself missing, along with her car. Answers would come, but not clean ones. The kind that feel incomplete, the kind that don't resolve questions, they multiply them. And at the center of it all was one person. The one person who could explain what happened. The one person no one could find. What happened in the 9 days between Joey's last known sighting and Alexis Brolin Jr. reporting her missing? Who or what started the fire? And how did baby Alexis die before the fire even began? And where was Joey? In cases like this, investigators start close to home, romantic partnerships, domestic relationships. And this case was no different. Because if Alexis Brolin Jr. had anything to do with Joey's disappearance or the fire, investigators were confident the evidence would lead them there. So today we're going to walk through what happened after the fire. What investigators uncovered and what began to emerge as they dug deeper into this case. Because what came out of that investigation did not bring clarity. It made this one of the most baffling missing persons cases in Pennsylvania. And today, April 26th, 2026, Joey Lynn Offutt is still missing. The 2 daughters that she left behind still have no closure. This is part 2 of Absence and Ashes, the Joey Lynn Offutt case on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark city landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes to bring you the story of what really happened. Welcome back to Crime to Burn. I'm April, a fire protection engineer, a former firefighter, and a woman currently being held hostage by her own aspirations.
And I'm the reason we have disclaimers. She's the reason they're accurate. And I'm broadcasting from a structurally questionable corner of reality where everything technically passes code, but nobody feels good about it. And I have a whistling pancreas.
That's a lot to think about. If you're new here, welcome. We are very glad that you're here. We do need one teensy favor from everyone. Go to your podcast player and leave us a 5-star rating. It is the single most helpful thing you can do to support the show and help us grow.
If you don't, you're a dick.
As of this recording, we've got 71 ratings on Spotify and 73 on Apple Podcasts. Special thank you to Crime Anonymous for the new written review on Apple. We appreciate you. And to the 2 people who disrupted our previously pristine all 5-star record, who hurt you? We're still sitting at a average 5-star rating, but for a very long time we had nothing but perfection, and now we've got 1 4-star review citing background music issues.
It's my fault.
And 1 3-star review with absolutely no explanation. Which brings me to...
That hurts.
It does.
I at least want to know what I did to piss you off. Like, I get that my music sucks, but like, what did I do, 3-star person?
Which brings me to a very brief side quest, because we also got a very passionate comment this week about our background music. And it's not the first one we've gotten, so let's talk about it just real quick. First, yes, I recently switched editing software. And we've got some upcoming projects that are going to be very exciting, but we needed a little bit of a different capability set that we didn't have before. But that also means that I am dialing in new sound levels, and I'll be adjusting the background music slightly this week because on Spotify, when I listened to it, it did come through a little louder than intended. But here's the part that I don't think a lot of people realize. We use very sensitive microphones because they pick up everything, but they give us that richness in our voices. But they pick up footsteps upstairs, our cat that has sinus issues, birds outside, even frogs, the general chaos of the natural world. And those sounds, we cannot always control them while we're recording, and they slip through, and when they do, they can pull you out of the story. They are distracting. And that's where the background music comes in. It is not just a stylistic choice, it's doing work. It helps to mask those inconsistencies so you stay immersed in the narrative. Now, could we use lower quality microphones? Sure, but we would lose the richness and depth in the vocals. Could we crank up the voice isolation? Also, yes, but it comes with its own trade-offs in sound quality. So every choice we make is a balance. And when we actually tested this and we got real feedback, the overwhelming response was that the background music improved the listening experience. So here's the reality. Everybody has different preferences. Some people hate background music. Some people find the raw room noise more distracting. I cannot release 47 different versions of the same episode to satisfy everyone's individual taste. We are walking a tightrope and we are doing our best, and I'm always open to feedback. But there's a big difference between constructive feedback and whatever emotional journey led someone to type, "Your music is very," all caps, tacky. One of those would help me improve the show. The other one makes me wonder who absolutely pissed in your Cheerios this morning. So if you've got feedback, I genuinely want to hear it. Just maybe leave the clause at home. And as a reminder, this show is free for you to listen to, but it is not free to produce. We just did our taxes, and I can tell you without exaggeration, this show costs thousands and thousands of dollars to create. And it doesn't even begin to account for all the time we put into it, for the research, the writing, the editing, and the constant investment in new equipment and software to make this show better every single week. We are operating at a very real financial deficit while trying to grow this into something sustainable. So yeah, I'll be honest. It does chap my ass a little when someone calls our production choices tacky. Because this isn't just a podcast, it's something that we've built from nothing. And when you've poured this much time, money, and effort into something, it's a little like someone calling your baby ugly. So, I'm going to adjust the audio levels. I'm always working to improve the show. But simply pointing out an issue with production is one thing, and there are very constructive ways to do that that aren't so aggressively critical. So if you've got feedback, I genuinely want to hear it. And you can send that feedback to crimetoburn@gmail.com, where you can also send us your personal fire stories, case suggestions, and go ahead and send us pictures of your own babies so I can tell you how beautiful they are. Now, y'all have been absolutely prolific in the comments this week, and I'm not even kidding, it gave me life. It single-handedly pulled me out of my background music-induced spiral, so thank you to Becky Beasley, back in the comments again this week. Girl, thank you. Gary Duncan, thanks for letting us know you're loving our niche. We love you for that. Tinky Holthausen, for showing up 3 times this week like an absolute superstar. It's great to hear from you again, and I am fully with you on spiraling if your husband doesn't text back fast enough. Kevin Tarrant, thank you for popping in and letting us know you're out there. And Gary Windshield, thank you. All of you are the MVPs this week. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. You can personally witness my slow descent into wrinkles and gray hair as the bags under my eyes race each other to see which one can reach my pants pockets first. When you see our content, like it, comment on it, share it, save it, whisper sweet nothings to it, whatever it takes. Because all of that tells the algorithm that we are worth showing to other people, and growing that audience is the lifeblood of this podcast. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your therapist, and you can even tell complete strangers by heading on over to our spread shop via the link in the show notes and grabbing some Crime to Burn merch. And God help me if I ever see someone in the wild wearing Crime to Burn merch that I don't already know, I will lose my ever-loving mind. If you'd like to support the show financially, it is deeply appreciated but never required. We do have a link in the show notes where you can join us in the Cult of Steve, and if you choose to activate your Steve gland, you'll get ad-free episodes, and of course, the gift of Steve's eternal stickiness with our exclusive Patreon-only sticker drops.
I wanted to read something that someone responded. It's basically the review version of pointing at a machine and saying, "It's weird," while the engineer is standing there like, "It's a phase-coherent, evolving loop designed to avoid cognitive fatigue, you walnut."
That's perfect. And that is what it's designed to do. And for those of you that don't know, my co-host, also the love of my life, the man I've committed the rest of my life to.
A very girthy friend.
The man I take to bed every night. Actually, I just joined him in bed. He goes to bed earlier than me.
Yeah, that's true.
He composed the background music specifically to help you avoid cognitive fatigue while you're listening and to keep the background noise that we can't control from interrupting your listening experience. You're welcome.
Hey, thanks for sticking up for me, man. I know my music sucks, but I'm doing the best I can here.
I love our background music. I really like it. I don't understand. I get that everyone's music taste is different, but I think it's really clever, and it's like you can listen to it on a loop and not. I don't feel fatigued by it. Maybe other people do, but I don't.
I don't think anybody realizes that I actually developed a mathematical algorithm for.
There is a mathematical algorithm playing in your ears right now. Appreciate it. And now we'll pause for a brief moment of background music appreciation. Just kidding. Let's get into the story.
Yeah, that music sucks so bad. That dog.
Last week, we started our coverage of the Joey Lynn Offutt case. Joey's house caught fire in the early morning hours of July 12th, 2007, and inside, investigators found the body of her infant son in the upstairs bathtub, and they later determined that he had died before the fire. They also determined that there were 2 separate fires set inside the home, one in the basement and one in the second-floor bathroom, a classic indicator of arson. Later that same day, Joey's fiancé goes to the police to report her missing. Now, he tells them he hasn't had any contact with her for 9 days. 9 days, despite repeatedly calling her, despite going to her house multiple times and trying to get her to answer the door. And after she missed multiple visits from the baby's home health nurse, he leaves a note and an ultimatum. Contact me or I'm calling the police. The next morning, around 4 a.m., the house burns. And later that same morning, allegedly before knowing about the fire, he goes to the police to report her missing. Now, during those 9 days leading up to the fire, there's another detail that becomes important. It's about Joey's car. According to her fiancé and the home health nurse, the car is sometimes there and sometimes gone. And that led them to believe that she was alive and fine and just refusing to answer the door because apparently moving your car around counts as a sign of life for some people. Now, Joey's fiancé tells police that this, her going completely radio silent and ignoring calls and refusing to answer the door, that was normal for her when she was upset. And he says the two had argued 9 days earlier on July 3rd over something as simple as bathing the baby in the kitchen sink. And according to him, this was just how she handled conflict.
Wait a minute. It wasn't just bathing the baby in the kitchen sink. He was trying to say that the kitchen sink was dirty and that she was making bad decisions.
Exactly. So according to him, this was just how she handled conflict. She shut down, she withdrew, she waited it out. Now what's interesting is her mother appears to back that up. When she learns that Joey isn't responding, she is initially concerned but not immediately alarmed. And I feel like that matters because for most people, 9 days of silence with a newborn in the house would be a full panic situation. That door is getting kicked in, police are getting called. But that's not what we see here. And to be very clear, this is not about blaming the mother. She was operating based on what she knew about her daughter. But her response tells us something important. That this behavior, while concerning, wasn't entirely out of the ordinary for Joey.
Can I interject a little bit?
Yeah.
I listened to our episode again after we recorded it, obviously. And it seems like he's using her personal quirks and habits against her. Like, he knows she operates like this, and then he uses that as an excuse or as a smokescreen.
Yes, and we're about to talk a lot about their actual relationship history leading up to before she went missing. So I think that you'll be able to get a lot more about the way he operates from that discussion.
Did you see what I'm saying?
I do. And at the time all this is happening, Joey's oldest daughter from her previous relationship is in Virginia with Joey's mother. Now, when Joey and Alexis Brolin return to Pennsylvania after visiting Joey's mother, Joey actually calls her mom and she is upset because she realizes that she had forgotten to pack her daughter's earplugs, the ones that she needs in order to safely wash her hair or go swimming because she has tubes in her ears. So Joey does what any parent would do. She immediately mails them to her mother, and she mailed them on July 2nd, and her mother received them just a day later. Impressive work, USPS.
Nice job.
But after that, her mom hears nothing from her. Her mother never speaks to her again. Joey stopped answering the phone, not just for Brolin, but for her mom too. So now it's not just a fiance being ignored after an argument, it's everyone. So the number one question that I've gotten from listeners this week is, why on earth did it take 9 days to file a missing persons report? And I actually may have an answer. Now, it may not be the kind of answer that makes you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But it is a possible explanation for why everyone involved was so hesitant to call the cops. And to understand it, we do have to shift our perspective. Because if you're looking at this through your own lens, 9 days may feel unthinkable. But we're not trying to understand your reaction, we're trying to understand Joey's. So let's take a step back and let's talk about her life and how we got to this point. Because Joey is not living with the man who fathered 2 of her children, a man she's engaged to, and a man she had just told her family that she'd finally set a wedding date with. So how do you end up there? Well, let's go back. According to Joey's mother, Joey was very naive. She fell in love easily and just as easily could fall out of it. But it wasn't just about relationships. Her mother describes her as being emotionally immature for her age. At one point, a medical professional, a psychiatrist, actually asked her mother how old she believed that Joey was mentally, and her mother said, I don't know, maybe 16? And the response she got back was, I think she's probably closer to 14.
Now, to be fair, I think I'm emotionally probably 9 years old.
Well,
this doesn't stunt you as a person.
Right. And I think that my mental age, it adjusts based on whether we're talking about fart jokes or, parenting decisions. I think there's a range for people, Yeah,
that's a good analogy. You got your dick and fart jokes on one side of the spectrum, and on the other side, you're doing particle physics.
Right. And I do think that when they were specifically talking about Joey's mental age, they were talking about Joey's mental age, the way she approached relationships and the way she fell in love super fast and was super trusting of people and, was all heart eyes as soon as she was interested in somebody.
Well, what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just trying to bring people into Joey's world. But Joey's mother actually described in the documentary, or the documentary people summarized what Joey's mother said, that she described it as a mental delay.
Be that as it may, I find it at least slightly disturbing that her mother would be willing to side with the person that was the perceived caregiver role or supportive person. That's the way she must have seen him, even though I am convinced that this person is involved in more nefarious activities, and she was just deceived by this person, and deceived by this person at the detriment of the way she perceived her daughter, and I find that disturbing in many ways.
I don't want to blame the mother, but at the same time...
I don't want to blame her, but...
Yeah.
This isn't blame. It's
there is just... I think in hindsight, it's easy to look back and say...
But why does your perception shift to the person who's not your daughter that supports...
Right.
She must have perceived him as a supporting role, right? And that must have been true on many levels, but the way he was being a supporting role, I suspect was... It stemmed from nefarious practices, or... I don't think he had a real fucking job, man.
So we're going to talk more about that. So let me keep going, and then we'll come back to this. And I will say, though, that in a lot of comments on this case, a lot of people ask why Joey was in an adult relationship if she was, quote-unquote, mentally 14 to 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a question that I can't answer. Okay, so the psychiatrist responds back that he thinks she's closer to 14. And that's not a diagnosis, but it does give us some context. Because in the interview with her mother on Disappeared, the picture starts to emerge that Joey was someone who was exceptionally impulsive and very overly trusting, and perhaps not always equipped to recognize risk the way others might. But in the fall of 2003, Joey meets Alexis. And we're not told exactly how they met, but initially her mother said that she liked him. And now her mother was told that he was in college studying psychology. And according to Brolin, he said he liked Joey immediately. He felt like they had a lot in common and shared the same values.
Wait, who is in college?
Brolin.
For psychology?
That's what he said. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if anyone's verified. But he says he liked Joey immediately. He felt like they had a lot in common and shared the same values. Good Christian morals. His words, not mine.
The hell you say?
That's what he said. Now, within a couple of months of meeting, Joey relocates. She moves from Virginia to State College, Pennsylvania to live with Alexis. And at this point, they each have a child from a previous relationship. So now they're a family of 4. According to Alexis, Joey has plans to apply to Penn State, but that never happens. And over time, another issue starts to surface. You see, neither of them are financially stable. Joey struggles to hold down a job, and Alexis does not appear to have a consistent one either. We know that at the time Joey disappeared, he told police that he had his own business designing web pages, but it's unclear how steady that income was or whether that was the work he was even doing at the time when Joey moved in with him.
How do you realize that Alexis is financially irresponsible? Like, what is the avenue to realizing that?
That I don't know. I can only tell you what's revealed in the articles and the sources that I was able to find. We just know
they postulate or speculate or whatever, but they don't.
Well, Joey's mom actually said that neither of them had regular income, had a regular job, and that was leading to tension in their relationship, which we're about to talk about. So what we do know is this, that money quickly becomes a problem, and the two begin fighting over it. And eventually Joey moves out, but the relationship doesn't end. They actually continue dating. And in 2005, they have a child together, a little girl. Now, here's where things get a little less clear. When Joey moves out, we don't know where she went because nobody mentions it in any of the sources that I read. But there's one detail that does stand out because after Joey disappears, Brolin tells police that Joey is familiar with women's shelters and knows how to access them. And so that raised a question for me. When Joey moved out, did she go to a shelter?
Well, I thought Joey had her own house that was
Not yet. This is before. This is when she first moved to Pennsylvania to be with Brolin.
Oh, okay.
So he's telling the detectives, oh yeah, she knows that there's women's shelters in the area. She knows how to access them and all that stuff. She's familiar with them, which tells me she has used women's shelters before. And because they don't tell us where she went when she left Brolin's house, I suspect she went to a women's shelter. And most of these women's shelters are designed for women that are in abusive relationships.
And they provide anonymity.
Right. I don't know that for sure. That's speculation on my part.
But good job, because they should provide anonymity, right?
Exactly.
So you shouldn't have found out.
But then she continues to date Brolin after she moves out. And then she gets pregnant.
So they're boning, having a good time.
Right. Now, she doesn't go back to Virginia. Instead, she stays in Pennsylvania. She stays in a relationship with Alexis. And during this time, she begins going online regularly using Alexis's computer. And she's meeting people online, men. Now, keep in mind, she has a baby on the way with Alexis at this point. And Alexis eventually discovers these conversations in her email on his computer. And he finds records of Joey chatting with other men online, some of whom are asking her for things like inappropriate photos. And one man in particular stands out. He tells her that he lives in California and he is a photographer, and she has the look that he needs for his modeling photos.
Mm-hmm.
But after looking into it further, it appears this individual was involved in producing pornography, which then raises questions about what his actual intentions were. And this is where...
Oh, I mean, maybe, but they're answered immediately.
That's true. And so this is where that earlier context becomes important, because Joey, by her mother's account, was exceptionally trusting and naive and not always receptive to being told that something might be unsafe or somebody might be somebody that she should be wary of. So even when her family tries to intervene and to warn her, it doesn't appear to really change her behavior. And at some point, the situation escalates. Now, the disappeared episode isn't entirely clear on what that escalation looked like, but it was enough that Joey's family became concerned for the safety of her children. And that signals a significant shift, because this isn't just concern over risky online behavior anymore. According to her mother, the emails that raised concerns weren't just about the people Joey was talking to, but she specifically talks about being concerned about Joey's state of mind. Now, what exactly that means, we're not told, and I'm not going to speculate beyond what's on the record, but here's what we do know. Her mother was so concerned about Joey's stability that in the fall of 2006, she takes legal action and she files for temporary custody of Joey's children, and she is granted it. And
Whoa. Wait a minute. That's serious because grandparents, you know how many rights they have? 0.
I know. So let me tell you what I'm deducing here. She's granted it, which I feel like tells us something important. Because courts are not going to remove children from a legal parent unless there is a demonstrated concern for their safety or well-being.
And that's a big deal because that sets precedence.
So whatever was happening during this time, it was serious enough to meet that threshold. And here's the challenge. We don't get the full picture. We don't have specific details. We don't know exactly what those emails that made her concerned about Joey's state of mind might have contained or what behavior led to that decision. Only that something was happening that raised enough concerns for the court to feel it justified to step in. Now, based on what we do know, it's unlikely that suggestive emails alone or even conversations about adult modeling or photo shoots or even videos would be enough on their own to result in a loss of custody. So that suggests there may have been additional concerns.
It may be immoral and I may not like it. I don't think that's illegal.
It's not. And that's why I don't think that that's the reason why they removed custody. They were very careful in how they worded it. And so I encourage you to actually watch the disappeared episode and to listen to the words her mother uses because she is very careful how she words it. And I think she's trying to protect the kids from finding out more than they need to after their mother's gone. That's my impression, but I could be wrong.
You're adorable. Let's move along.
Okay. So we don't know what was happening behind the scenes, only that whatever it was, it must have been serious enough for the court to intervene. So when Joey's mother is granted temporary custody, she has not told Joey ahead of time she did this. And instead, she shows up to get the kids with sheriff's deputies. And Joey loses it, understandably. Because from her perspective, her children are being taken away from her without any warning. So according to the disappeared episode, there was a big scene. Now, that moment, I feel like may help explain something else. May help explain why people were so hesitant to involve law enforcement later when she disappeared. Why they thought she would be pissed about it.
But why would they care?
That's another question.
Demonstrated like some kind of propensity towards violence? I don't think so.
No. Because the last time police were involved, it resulted in something that was very disruptive and very emotional. And you can see why maybe for at least a few days, someone might hesitate to escalate again. It's the same day, the day that Joey's mother takes the children, that her mother also learns Joey is now pregnant with her third child, which is her second child with Alex Brolin Jr. So according to her mother, the goal was never to permanently take the children. It was to get Joey to accept help and to push her toward counseling or whatever kind of therapies they felt that she needed, and to address whatever behaviors had initially raised these concerns in the first place. And for a time, it seemed to work. Joey engages. Her relationship with Brolin actually stabilizes during this time, and she does regain custody of her children with her mother's support. And then her mother makes another really big step. She decides to buy Joey a house so that her stability is not contingent on marriage, not contingent on Brolin. It's just a place of her own, a stable environment where she can now raise her children and not have to rely on anyone else or stability in any other aspects of her life to have her own place.
Now I see the arc.
Now, we don't know exactly where Joey was living before that, but when you look at all of this together, the custody concerns, the instability, the need to create separate, stable home environments, it can raise a question. Was Joey struggling with housing stability before this, possibly even relying on shelters or temporary arrangements? And we don't have any confirmation of that. But the decision to provide her with a home does suggest that stability had been a concern, and now that she has a house, Joey is thrilled. She loves the house. For the first time, she has something that feels permanent and stable, and she moves in, and now her new home is in Sykesville. But Brolin stays where he's living at the time, which is in Clearfield, which is about 30 minutes away. So even though they're still in a relationship, they're not living together. But when they first met, they did move in together, and they were living in an apartment in State College, Pennsylvania. But that's no longer part of the picture, but you need to remember it because it's going to come back. So Joey has her place in Sykesville, Brolin's living in Clearfield, the relationship continues, there's some distance between them, about 30 miles, I think. So Joey and the kids move into the house in January of 2007, and her mom says that during this period, her life seemed to be back on track. She has stability, her relationship with Brolin is going really well. And on June 3rd, Joey and Alexis go to the hospital and welcome their son, Alexis Brolin III. And this is the same baby who will later be found in that bathtub. Now, around this time, Alexis and Joey start talking about getting married, and eventually they decide to move forward with it. But also around this time, Joey has a conversation with her mother and shares a concern. She tells her mother she wonders whether Brolin might be pushing for them to get married in order to position himself in a stronger custody position over the children in case their relationship ever fell apart. So what does that mean? Were they still having issues or still fighting? Or was Joey just still carrying the weight and trauma of what had already happened after losing custody of her kids once? And now she's seeing risk everywhere? We just don't know. But let's step back for just a second and look at the bigger picture. Joey is described as impulsive, emotionally immature, struggling at times with stability. She's had a previous marriage that ended, and her relationship with Brolin has been turbulent enough that she moved out, possibly into a shelter situation, but that's speculation. And we know that she has engaged in what many people would consider very risky online behavior. And now she's just had a baby. And according to Brolin, right after the baby was born, he says, Joey's happy again. That's his word, again. As if this is recent, a fresh start, a house, a baby, a relationship that's back on track. But then, when he reports her missing, he tells police something different. He says that Joey was suffering from postpartum depression. And that's not coming out of nowhere. Her mother and sister both described her pregnancy as being difficult and something that really took a lot out of her, which supports the idea that she may have been struggling after giving birth. I mean, who didn't? So now we're left with two versions of Joey at the same point in time. Happy, starting over, or struggling, overwhelmed, and possibly depressed. And those two things don't necessarily cancel each other out, but they do complicate the picture. And right before she disappeared, when she was visiting family, Joey was telling people, oh, we set a wedding date. She's showing off her engagement ring. By all accounts, everyone says, but she seemed exhausted, but excited. And then there's that detail we talked about earlier, the earplugs. Now she realizes she forgot to mail them, or she forgot to bring them to Virginia for her daughter. So she goes to mail them to her mom, and she does it like immediately. And they arrive the next day, fast enough that her mom was surprised. Now that doesn't prove anything on its own, but it is a data point because when people are generally struggling with debilitating depression, especially if it's severe, small tasks like mailing earplugs can feel overwhelming. But Joey was still following through and taking action, and at least on some level of functioning. And that doesn't mean she wasn't struggling, because the two things can be true at once.
I feel like that's scraping the barrel of function.
It is, but you can be excited and depressed, and you can be exhausted to the point of breaking and still present a version of yourself to the world that looks okay. But when you step back and look at the interviews, one thing really starts to stand out. The narrative that Joey was depressed seems to be coming primarily from Brolin. Now, to be fair, there is some context that supports the possibility that she really was struggling. Her mother had previously expressed concern about her state of mind back before she had the third baby. We know her pregnancy had been difficult, so it's not coming out of nowhere, but it's really not a clean picture, it's murky. So the question came up about medication, because Brolin tells police that Joey had started taking antidepressants.
Like which ones?
Didn't tell us. And according to the disappeared episode, the home health nurse initially supports that and says, yeah, Joey was on antidepressants. But when investigators follow up, they check with pharmacies in the area, they review her medical records, and they can find zero evidence that she had been prescribed or filled any prescriptions for antidepressants.
The hell?
I know. This is baffling to me because it said that the nurse confirmed it. So that would be a medical record. That she knew that Joey was on antidepressants.
Yeah,
so
how would she know that?
Wouldn't that be part of her medical record if she was Joey's nurse?
It would have to be.
Right. So then they're saying that there was no medical records that she was ever prescribed them. So apparently the nurse had, my takeaway from this is that the nurse had documented that Joey told her she was taking these, but they couldn't find anyone that prescribed them.
Is this a function of where you get privacy from psychological?
Oh, HIPAA?
No, not necessarily HIPAA, but like, where would it be recorded? How would it be recorded? Like, where would you go retrieve that?
Well, I'm guessing that they would have to get a court to subpoena her medical records, and that's probably what they did. And they didn't have any record of a doctor prescribing her this medication. And because They were trying to be sure, like the police talk about, they went to like every pharmacy within like this huge radius to try to see if she had filled antidepressants at any of these pharmacies, and they found none in her name. But let's talk about what investigators actually do find, because they do find some things. So, after the fire inside the house, in one of the upstairs bedrooms, there is a gas can. And investigators determine...
Why is there a gas can in an upstairs bedroom?
Because it was the gas can that was used to light the fire.
But, like, people don't normally just keep a gas can upstairs in the bedroom.
That's why it stood out.
I wouldn't, right?
They were like, we think this fire's arson. There's 2 fires lit in this house. We suspect an accelerant was used. I'm guessing that they probably smelled the odor of gasoline. And there's a gas can over here in this room. And so they tested it, and they determined that the gas in the gas can matched what was used to light the fire.
That's actually pretty impressive. You know, like how many flavors of gas are there?
I don't know, honestly. I should ask that question of an expert. So, inside the house in an upstairs bedroom, there is a gas can. And investigators determined that the gasoline from that can was used to start both fires, the one in the basement and the one in the upstairs bedroom. So this is confirmed to be arson and that an accelerant was used. And we also know this. The baby's body was already in the bathtub before the fire was set in the bathroom. And that's largely where the publicly available details from the fire investigation end, because this case is still open. And when a case is still open, investigators don't release everything that they have. They're not hiding the full reports, but they are keeping the public out of some of the details that could potentially harm the investigation in the future.
What does that mean?
And well, there's certain details that they expect only the perpetrators to know, and they usually try to trip the perpetrators up into admitting those details during interrogations. And so they'll keep some of those details back, knowing that only the perpetrator would know. So we don't know everything that the fire investigator found.
All right.
And that's not the only physical evidence. They also find hamburger meat.
Like actual hamburger meat?
And if you're eating, you might want to pause here and come back later.
Especially if you're having like stroganoff.
Now, remember, on July 3rd, when Brolin had gone to Joey's house, he brought groceries. And on the grocery list that he had shopped from was ground beef, hamburger meat. And after the fire, investigators find that same package sitting on the kitchen counter, not in the fridge. It's not put away, it's out, and it's covered in maggots, which tells us that it had been sitting there for days. Now, insect activity can be used to estimate how long something has been exposed like that. And based on that analysis, investigators determined that the meat had been left out beginning somewhere between July 3rd and July 5th.
This motherfucker was covering up a murder from weeks ago.
And it never moved. So now we have a window. July 3rd, the day the groceries were brought in, and the night of the argument, to July 5th, 2 days later. So then the question becomes, did anyone actually see Joey between the 3rd and the 5th? And the answer is yes. Someone says they did. Now, Joey's house sits right in the middle of town, and it's actually surrounded by churches. In fact, after the house was eventually torn down, one of those churches purchased that lot and turned it into their parking lot. So this is not an isolated location. There are people around. And on July 5th, 2 days after the argument with Brolin, someone says, yeah, they saw Joey. It was actually a youth pastor from one of those churches, and he tells investigators that he saw her walking and pushing a baby stroller. And he says that he greeted her, and she completely ignored him, walked right past, and it stood out to him because they had interacted before. They had been friendly. They weren't strangers. Now, one of the first questions people ask is, how confident can he be about that date? Could he have mixed up the day? And that is a fair question. And one source suggests that he had been at the church that day cleaning up after an event, possibly I've heard a wedding, which is how he was able to anchor the timeline.
How long ago after the event was he interviewed, and how much information did he have about the event before he was interviewed?
I don't know specifically how long after he said this, but I am going to give you some more information. I've only seen that detail in one place, so it's not something that I think we can fully rely on. And this sighting has been very heavily scrutinized, because when police ask him if he saw the baby in the stroller, he says he didn't. And that has a lot of people speculating that the stroller was empty and that something was already terribly wrong. But here's the issue about that interpretation.
This person's recountance of whatever is highly suspect.
Okay. But here's the issue with that interpretation. He didn't say the stroller was empty. He said he didn't specifically notice the baby in the stroller. And this is a very young infant. It's entirely possible that the stroller was covered up to shield it from the sun, or that he was at the wrong angle to see it.
Some people carry dogs in strollers.
We simply just don't know. Maybe he wasn't even paying close attention. And so we have to be careful not to fill in the gaps with assumptions. But at the same time, we can't ignore other possibilities, that he may still have had the date wrong. Or he maybe saw somebody else entirely and assumed it was Joey, which would explain why they didn't respond to him. So this sighting, while I think it's important, I don't feel like it gives us any certainty. But it gives us another piece of the puzzle, one that could support multiple versions of events. So at this point, investigators are working with a profile of Joey, that she is overwhelmed, possibly depressed, emotionally immature, prone to risky behavior, influenced by people who may not have had her best interests at heart. And based on that, one of the leading theories is that Joey left.
I want to know how long it was after she disappeared that he made this claim.
I cannot tell you that. That's not, the information is not available.
That seems really like a pivotal piece of information.
I agree, but all I can tell you is what's available, and I don't have that information.
All right. You see why
I do. So based on that, one of the leading theories is that Joey left, that something happened to the baby, whether by accident or intent, and she tried to cover it up by setting the fire and fled. And that's not the only direction they're looking. They're also considering whether somebody she met online could have lured her away or harmed her. There's the possibility of a random crime, an opportunistic offender. Someone who encountered Joey, takes control of the situation, and becomes responsible for whatever it was that happened next. Maybe
sounds more likely that it's somebody closer.
Maybe that person was the one moving her car, and maybe they're the one who ultimately sets the fire. And then, of course, there's Brolin, the last person that we know of for sure to see her. So investigators have to ask, is he telling the truth? Did he go to the house? Did he leave those notes? Did he make those phone calls? And they check. And the phone records check out, the timeline checks out, the notes are there, they hold up, but that doesn't really prove anything.
Did they toss his house and look for car keys?
I'm getting there. So that doesn't really prove anything. Someone could still make all of those calls and go to her house knowing that Joey's not going to answer in order to try to lend some credibility to their part of the story. Meanwhile, investigators are trying desperately to find Joey's car because that car can answer a lot of questions. At the same time, they search Joey's house and they find a computer, and for a moment they have this ray of hope. Maybe her online activity will point to someone somewhere, but nothing. According to investigators, her internet had been disconnected for months due to non-payment, and they find nothing on the computer that explains what happened. Phone records, same story. No clear indication of anyone that she was in regular contact with who might have harmed her. They did look into people, but they said they were able to clear everyone they looked into. And we don't know everyone specifically that they looked into. But dead ends.
I'm not really surprised.
So the focus shifts back to Brolin, and he is, by all accounts, extremely cooperative. He gives investigators access to his computers and to his phone records and to his car without search warrants. He agreed to take that polygraph. And now, depending on who you ask, that level of cooperation can be read in different ways. But investigators do consistently describe him as fully cooperative, at least early in the investigation. Now, according to Crime Junkies, and I have not been able to independently verify this, there is also a moment where investigators note an odor in Brolin's car, and Brolin explains to them that he had transported some kind of raw meat, I think maybe a turkey, and that it had leaked, like some of the juices got on the floor mats, and so he immediately takes the floor mats and hands them over to the cops and says, here you go stem them, and it checks out. It's not decomposed.
It's turkey.
It's turkey. Again,
So he's a hunter.
I think he just bought a turkey from the grocery store and didn't realize the package had a little hole.
Oh, okay.
Started on. But I don't know for sure. Maybe he's
I'm trying to profile this motherfucker.
Anyway, so it checks out. And again, I can't independently corroborate that detail, but what is consistent across all the sources is that Brolin cooperates completely, at least early in the investigation. And from the investigators' perspective, there is one other factor at play that they're considering. It does seem that they don't believe that Brolin has the capability to carry out something this potentially complex and leave behind no physical evidence, no clear trace, no obvious mistakes, or nothing that would potentially directly implicate him. So as the investigation moves forward, it seems like their focus begins to shift toward the possibility that someone else was involved or that Joey left on her own. But then they find Joey's car. It's parked in an apartment complex in State College, Pennsylvania, the same town where Joey and Brolin had once lived together. In fact, it's in the exact complex where they used to live together. So now the case shifts again, because the car didn't just disappear. It was taken somewhere very familiar to both Joey and Brolin. And some have looked at that detail and suggested that maybe Joey was experiencing some kind of mental episode and became disoriented or confused and drove to the wrong place and returned to what was once home. But that interpretation doesn't sit well with her family, and it requires a pretty significant leap. It's not just not the right town, it's like an hour away, and it's a very specific location, a place that's tied directly to her past. And so, is it coincidence or is it intentional? But when Joey's family sees the photos of the car, their reaction is immediate. And they say, oh no, Joey was not the last person to drive that car. Because the car isn't just parked, it's backed in, centered, clean, a perfect parking job. And according to her family, Joey was a horrific driver. She would have never backed into a parking place. This is completely out of character. They say she struggled with basic parking forward. So the idea that she would back into a space and do it well, they say does not line up with what they knew about her. But some people have taken that point and run with it, and some people have even gone so far as to point out that backing into parking spaces is more commonly done by men.
Actually, hey, let's take a breath here.
I'm going to.
That's absolutely true.
It is.
I back into all my parking spots.
I never
and
back
I
into
notice the people that don't, and there is a disparage between.
There is a disparity, I agree. But let us also be careful there, because a well-parked car, even one backed into a space, doesn't prove Joey wasn't driving. Maybe she had a really good day. Maybe it took her multiple attempts. Maybe she wasn't driving.
Maybe she ran over a duck.
But from this detail alone, we can't say for certain. But there is one more detail that's, I think, very important. Joey was very small. Her mother says she was 5'1", her driver's license says 5'3", but either way, she's short. And when the car is found, the driver's seat is pushed all the way back, and the seat is reclined to the point that from that position, she likely would never had any chance of being able to see over the steering wheel. So now we have a second detail. First, the way the car is parked, and now the position of the seat, both of which seem inconsistent with Joey being the driver. But again, trying to play devil's advocate and being careful here, there could be other explanations. Maybe
like she could have had like a leg cramp or something.
Well, I was going to
slide that thing back.
Maybe she got there early when she was meeting somebody and she pushed the seat back and reclined it to take a nap. Maybe she was looking for something. Maybe she dropped her wallet or something and she moved the seat back to see if she could find it.
Maybe the story's bull.
Maybe it's bull. But this isn't definitive proof that Joey didn't drive the car, but when you put the details together, the parking job and the seat position, it starts to feel less likely that she was the last person behind the wheel. So police are very eager to process the car because this could be it. There could be blood evidence or body fluids or fingerprints or anything left behind, something to finally explain what might have happened. And they process it top to bottom, and they come up with nothing. There is no blood, no body fluids, no clear forensic evidence, no helpful fingerprints, no sign of a struggle, no obvious clue pointing to where Joey could be or anyone else that might have been in the car. It's just a car. And to investigators, this ends up being a complete dead end. Now, it's also important to note that once police actually locate the car, they don't go in and process it right away. They actually set up surveillance and watch it for a while because they want to see if anyone comes back to it or touches it or checks on it. And nothing. No one approaches it. So eventually they do move in and process it. But they come up empty. So
Wait, they come up empty.
They don't get anything from the
No
car.
prints, no... This can't be true.
They said that there was no useful prints, which I took to mean that only people that they knew had driven the car had prints there.
Okay.
So now they turn outward and they begin canvassing the apartment complex door to door to try to figure out when the car showed up and whether anyone saw Joey. And nobody reports seeing her, but one resident does offer something, and he said he believes the car showed up on July 12th, the same day that Joey's house burned, the same day that Brolin reported Joey missing, and he's not completely certain about the 12th, but he is certain that it was there by July 13th. So the 12th or the 13th it shows up. So this does start to narrow down a timeline because placing that car in that specific complex, the exact place that Joey had previously lived, suggests a familiarity. It makes a completely random, opportunistic offender a lot less likely. Not impossible, but very unlikely, because the odds that somebody unfamiliar with Joey would choose that exact location over an hour away by coincidence is so extremely low. So from the investigative standpoint, this points in a different direction. Either Joey drove the car there herself or someone who knew her and knew her history did. What happens after that is still an open question. It's possible someone could have encountered her there. It's possible that she still had connections to people that live in the complex, but there's no clear indication, at least in the information available publicly, that investigators were able to confirm either of those scenarios. So what's left is this. The location of the car doesn't answer any questions, but it does change the shape of the investigation to suggest somebody close to Joey or Joey herself is responsible for getting the car to that location. And then there's the uncomfortable question. If Alexis Brolin Jr. is responsible, if he's the one that moved that car to dump it somewhere, why choose a location that he is so closely connected to? The same apartment complex? It's part of his history too. And on its face, that feels like a bad decision, a choice that would draw attention to him, not deflect it.
Like I said, there's room for improvement in crime management.
Which is exactly why a lot of people are looking at that detail and saying, oh, it couldn't have been him, because if he were trying to avoid suspicion, why pick a place that ties to him? But here's the thing, that logic also assumes the person responsible is thinking clearly, planning perfectly, making optimal decisions, and that's not always how these situations play out. So yeah, it could point away from him, or it could mean something else entirely, and it's worth noting. Brolin himself does not believe Joey was driving that car. He points to the same things we've been discussing, the way it was parked, the position of the seat, and he says it does not match how she drove. So Joey's mother actually has a different perspective. She describes Joey as someone who never saw strangers the way that most people do, someone who trusted everyone was a friend, she connected quickly with people, and because of that, she tells people she still has not ruled out the possibility that someone took advantage of that and manipulated her or did something awful. She even notes that Joey would pick up hitchhikers, which, in the context of everything we've talked about, adds another layer of risk. Now, I
think that speaks to her character.
I do too. She was everything that I've read about her suggests that she was just very, I don't even want to say naive, I want to say innocent. And
I don't think innocent's the right word, but I think, just a genuinely good person.
Yes. Now, this case was eventually featured on America's Most Wanted, and it did generate tips. Several people reported sightings of Joey. Specifically, I know of two, one in West Virginia with a cult, which didn't pan out, and one in Alabama, which also didn't pan out. But these were places that were very far from where she disappeared, and according to investigators, every single lead they got was followed up on, and none of them have thus far led anywhere. So where does that leave things? Now, police have still not ruled out foul play. They have not ruled out that Joey left on her own, and nearly 2 decades later, they still don't have an answer, but the story does not end there because I have left out one very key detail. Joey was very active online. We already talked about that. At one point, she was a frequent contributor to a forum for young mothers, posting extensively about her life and her relationship with Brolin. And some of those posts make some very serious allegations. She told people online that Brolin was a felon and a drug user and that she was afraid of him.
What?
She also claimed that his son from a previous relationship had assaulted her daughter in their home.
I didn't know he had a kid.
When I told you at the beginning that they both had a
but
child.
I didn't put it together.
So she said that his son assaulted her daughter and that the incident was the reason her daughter was removed from her custody.
Whoa.
That's what she said.
What?
On an online forum.
I'm trying to make sure I got it right. Someone assaults her daughter, and that leads to her losing custody of her daughter?
So it seems that she presented it as this kid assaults her daughter, and her mother is now thinking that because she's still in a relationship with Brolin.
Kid assaults lady's daughter. Her mother, that's the lady now.
Okay. I'm having trouble following the way you're laying it out, so I'm going to do it again. Joey has a daughter. Brolin has a son.
Yep.
Brolin's son allegedly assaults Joey's daughter in some way we don't know. Joey and Brolin are still in a relationship. Joey's mother comes in and says, your daughter's in danger in this situation, I'm taking her away.
Oh.
That's what Joey says happened on the forum. But, and I want to make this clear, we don't have anything that corroborates that version of events, and it is absolutely possible that Joey presented the events in a way that helps her save face with people that she was friends with online. So it could have been that it was really about her instability, or it could have been that she was lying online. We don't know. And I'm trying to...
maybe all those things could be true.
All of them could be true. She also says online that she had filed for a protective order against Brolin. And according to Crime Junkie, they were able to find the protective order. It was filed in 2005, but Joey later allowed it to lapse. What we don't know is whether the incident involving his son was actually connected to the custody decision. Joey's family seems to indicate that the custody concerns were related to Joey's own behavior, which raises the possibility that Joey may have been presenting a different version of events online, trying to explain or justify what was happening in her life to a group of people that she trusted.
Well, and of course.
Yeah. And Brolin, for his part, he tells a completely different story. He says that the two had been arguing. He asks her to leave. She refuses to leave. And so he...
Wait, he asked her to leave?
Yeah, he said that when...
Leave where?
We're talking specifically about the incident that resulted in the protection order.
Where were they, though?
They were living together in State College, Pennsylvania.
Living together in like an apartment or...
Yes, they were living together in that apartment.
And he asked her to leave the apartment.
They'd been fighting. They got in a big fight. And he told her, leave.
But she was part of the lease, right?
No, she moved in with him. He lived there first. So he tells her to leave. She refuses to leave. And so he says that she got physical with him and he shoved her. And that is what resulted in the protection order against him. That's what he says. But the incident did lead to him getting arrested. So again, we have two versions of the same situation and no clear way to fully reconcile them at this time. Now, there's another detail here that complicates things. According to one source, Joey posted in that forum over 500 times between February of 2005 and June 5th, 2007. Which
500 times?
Yeah.
In 5 months?
No, 2005 to 2007, 2 years.
That's more than 5 months.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of times.
But here's what's interesting. The last post was June 5th, 2007. And investigators had said that her internet had been disconnected for months due to non-payment. So she was still posting as late as June 2007, only a month before she disappeared. So if her internet had been disconnected for months, she was still accessing the internet somewhere. Mm-hmm. Which also means that she could have still been communicating with people outside of her home. And by 2007, the tone of her posts on that message board had drastically shifted.
Well, look, in 2007, your home internet isn't the only way to get on the internet, man.
Right. Now, in 2007, instead of fear, she was telling everybody all about her new baby and that how having children had changed Brolin and that things were better and that they were going to get married. And yes, Brolin had a criminal history, but...
Whoa.
Yeah, he did.
Whoa.
I'm about to tell you what it was for.
Because I suspect the out of this.
So I'm going to tell you exactly what Brolin's criminal history was. You ready?
No. He's either selling drugs or he's selling drugs. That's all.
Brolin was arrested in the 1980s and received probation for robbery. That was the only criminal history he had up until 2007.
Robbery. Give me context.
Wait a minute. I don't know the full context. All I know is he committed robbery in the 80s and he got probation.
I suspect him as a drug dealer.
Well, wait a minute. Let me keep going. So, he committed robbery in the 80s. He received probation, but he later violated that probation by receiving stolen goods, and so he did have to serve time. But nothing in his earlier record suggests a level of sophistication that would point to a carefully planned evidence-free crime. Until 2020. Because in 2020, Brolin is indicted as part of a large-scale methamphetamine operation, an operation that took down more than 30 people, and he is not just described as a participant, he is presented as the one running it, the organizer, the mastermind behind the operation.
You want to hear what the sound of a mic falling sounds like?
That was the sound of headphones falling, not a mic falling.
That's a studio faux pas, not a celebration dance. I just was a drug dealer!
So he was presented as the one running the ring and the organizer, the mastermind of the operation. And when he was arrested, he was found in possession of over 2 pounds of methamphetamine, along with multiple firearms, including several that had the serial numbers removed.
Let's stop for a second. Mm-hmm. How do we measure methamphetamine?
I have no idea. I don't know if 2 pounds is a lot or a little. Or...
It sounds like a lot to me. I don't really know, but it sounds like more than you want to carry in a backpack, maybe.
I think it was in his apartment. They busted him at his apartment, and they said that there was firearms out on the kitchen table when they came in. Apparently, he was prohibited from having firearms. So he is found in possession of over 2 pounds of methamphetamine with multiple firearms that have serial numbers removed. And so that earlier picture of someone unsophisticated and disorganized, it really starts to fall apart. And suddenly, Joey's online allegations start to carry a different kind of weight, at least for me. And that doesn't automatically connect him to her disappearance. And it doesn't answer the question of what happened in 2007 because there are still some big gaps. But if he was operating on that level, was he already capable of it back then, or did that come later? And then there's this. Despite his arrest and his indictment and his conviction and his eventual extensive prison sentence, he never offers up any information about Joey's disappearance. He doesn't seem to try to leverage it for leniency. Nothing to explain what happened. Which leaves us in the same place we started, with questions and no answers. So my initial assessment of Brolin as a mostly sentient potato goes right out the window, along with my confidence in my own ability to judge people.
Hey, he does look like a potato.
He does.
In your defense.
Now, his later convictions, guns, drugs, all of it, do not mean that he's responsible for Joey's disappearance, but they do change the equation because it becomes a lot harder to say that he couldn't be involved. And it opens the door to even another possibility that I haven't really seen anyone speculate about, but it's one that hit my brain and I find it really disturbing. What if Joey's disappearance is connected to that world? Maybe there was debts or rivalries or people that were willing to use violence or worse to send a message. Maybe Joey and her infant son became part of that. Now, to be clear, there is zero evidence publicly available to support that theory. And in a case like this, it sits alongside all of the others. And if somebody's missing long enough, you can have them declared dead in order to collect whatever potential life insurance they had, if they have children and custody needs to be worked out. So, in 2016, a judge declared Joey Lynn Offutt legally dead, a step that her family petitioned for, likely to be able to handle her estate and the complex realities surrounding custody of her children. But the case remains open. And if you have any information regarding the disappearance of Joey Lynn Offutt or the death of her infant son, Alexis Brolin III, you can contact the Pennsylvania State Police at 814-938-0510. There is a reward. Joey would be 52 years old today. At the time of her disappearance, she was approximately 5'1" to 5'3", around 110 pounds with reddish-brown hair, and she spoke with a noticeable lisp. And nearly 2 decades later, we still do not know what happened to her. And that's Absence to Ashes, the Joey Lynn Offutt case, right here on Crime to Burn. This is a test of the emergency broadcast system. Had this been an actual emergency?
You would.
Meh. Yeah, if we did video, it would really help to be able to afford a video editor. But the problem is we got to get people.
It would go
to
crazy
tell
if
their
we had
friends.
someone that with OCD and a little autism.
So like us?
Like us, but not us.
Right.
I only hurkled my Durkle for an hour after you got to bed.
I tried to wake you up for the possum. And the possum ran off.
Yeah, there was no possum.
It was
This
there.
is an imaginary possum.
I'm going to record it with my phone next time so you can see it.
No, come get me. I want to catch it.
Well, if you leave a trash bag on the front porch, it'll come back. It likes the trash bags.
That's a good point. I don't even have a full one right now.
Just put a sandwich out there when you go to bed.
Put an old sandwich out there.
There's possums with a P and opossums with an O, and they're different.
There's possums with a P?
Yes.
What is that?
So, opossums have white faces and gray bodies and naked rat-like tails, while we have opossums. While Australian possums are smaller with fluffy tails and varied colors.
Oh, so on the other side of the earth, they got something different.
Yeah.
Go figure.
So, this possum was like the size of a corgi. It was huge.
It was like the size of a small beagle.
Yes, exactly. Just like a computer monitor from the 80s. If you guys didn't listen to the Benson car bombing case, that's not going to make any sense. It was easily double the size of the largest possum I've ever seen.
I just don't feel like you have that much possum experience.
I don't have a ton of possum experience. Anyway, this thing was so big. I couldn't. I know, that's what she said. And this is what I said. It's huge. It was bigger than both of the cats combined.
It's the most girthy possum you'd ever seen.
It was like if you put Watts end to end and doubled her width.
Ridiculous.
The cats were losing their mind. The dog was like, I'll take care of this, and immediately ran it into the corner. So then There was hissing and
Good boy.
trying to snat, and I was trying to drag him away, and he was so mad at me that I wouldn't let him eat the possum.
Well, yeah. From what I understand, a dog believes the south end of a northbound possum is delicious.
Well, the problem is the northbound end was pointing at him and was hissing and nipping, like, because he was trying to lunge at it, and the possum was lunging right back. And well, they will bite if they're cornered. They
Bite who?
bite whoever's trying to get
Bite
them.
me?
No, not you. Nobody would bite you. I decided to remove his face from the possum's
You removed his face?
general area by removing his whole body from the
I thought you said he
possum's
wasn't going southbound.
No, it wasn't.
You removed it from his general area.
The possum was now frozen in fear on our porch.
And they'll remain that
And
way
it
for
remained that way
quite
for
some
like
time.
15 minutes. I timed it. Just like, because they're at a funeral today. You're about to knock over your.
Why are they at a funeral?
I'm guessing somebody died.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
Smart ass mother.
Well, what do you want me to say? There's one thing that brings the family together. It's funerals
Delusion.
and rabbit hunting.
I like that one.
Yeah. It's a nice beaver you have on your shirt.
Thanks for noticing. Life's better with a beaver.
That's what your shirt says. Did I tell you I was talking to my dad, and my dad is hard of hearing.
Yes.
And I was telling him that you were making concrete pavers, and he was like, "Why is he making concrete beavers?"
Oh, I need a concrete beaver mold. That'd be awesome.
I'll add it to the shopping list right after the Treadle Fear.
Look for that on Vine.
Okay.
Concrete beaver mold.
If I start searching for beaver molds on Amazon, my recommended for you page is going to get so weird.
Yeah, don't, because they might think you mean.
Oh no, we're not getting that kind of beaver mold. Some things don't need to be molded.
Some things do.
I think we picked the perfect time to record. This is going to go great.
Yeah, right. I feel trauma approaching me.
You ready for me to touch you with the trauma?
I don't think there's anything I can do to prevent it at this point of.
Small details that don't quite line up.
Like butt cracks.
My butt crack lines up. I don't know what's wrong with yours.
Non-symmetric butt cracks. And I'm a part-time narrator of bad decisions and a full-time witness to how they catch fire. And I'm here to ask the kinds of questions that make professionals reconsider their career choices.
And we actually get a really super clear glimpse.
I like it when I have a clear glimpse of your.
This episode's brought to you by potty breaks, interrupting productivity, emotional breakthroughs, and very important podcast recordings since about 2 minutes ago. This episode's brought to you by potty breaks because apparently we can solve complex investigations, or at least talk about them, but we cannot plan our hydration accordingly. So inside the house in the upstairs.
Sorry. Oh boy. Part of me came out. Part of me that was inside is now outside. Oh, I got a few more things to get out. Be gone, demon! My beard is an enhancement to this scenario. You married me, idiot.
Best decision I've ever made. Look how happy we are.
Time will tell. It's like staring into the Matrix.
And now for a PSA from Crime to Burn. If the background music is your biggest takeaway from a 50-minute true crime episode, you may have missed several things.
There's so much more to criticize. Attention. Yes, you, the one pretending you're just listening. While your brain is currently being rearranged like furniture in a haunted house, you think background music is decoration. You think it's optional. You think it's vibes. It is not vibes. It is a psychological architecture. While you're out here breathing through your mouth and nodding along, someone has carefully constructed a sonic loop designed to bypass your conscious mind and settle into your soft, defenseless perception center. You didn't notice it looping. Of course you didn't. That's the point. That's like congratulating yourself for not noticing oxygen. And your sense of time is being massaged like it just got a spa membership.
You said that like Christopher Walken. Membership?
Membership? And what do you call this invisible, seamless manipulation? Tacky? Tacky. It's like walking into a cathedral, staring at the stained glass and going, kind of mid.
Remember, the background music is actually not the villain in the story.
That's all you got.
Oh, yeah.
God, just delivered a lot. Now it's your response.
Not the villain. Not the villain.
I didn't do it. I'm not the meth dealer here.
Stay safe, stay hydrated, and stay tacky.
Because otherwise you'll dry all the way out.
Okay, here we go. Crime to Burn is a production of Crime to Burn, LLC, where we light fires in your brain and not your buildings. All rights reserved. Still spiritually parched after this episode? It's okay, Steve believes in cross-pollination. Here's a trailer for a show we think deserves to infiltrate your ear holes, in a good way. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review before you go. Steve is watching.
Do you love true crime and travel? Having traveled the world solo the last couple of years and being obsessed with true crime, I found myself researching others who took the same vacations but never made it home. The Last Trip is a true crime podcast covering missing and murdered people that were living their best lives on vacation. I'm your host, Jamie Beebe, and each week I'll bring you on The Last Trip, taking a deep dive into vacation culture and travel spots, tips on staying alive while traveling, and ultimately recreating someone's last days in paradise. What led to their last trip? What are the hard facts? What is the final outcome? And could you be next? David Snedden was a 24-year-old college student from Utah attending Mandarin classes in Beijing when he mysteriously disappeared while hiking Tiger Leaping Gorge. Chinese authorities said he drowned in the gorge, and U.S. authorities agreed, although his body was never found and his parents didn't believe that. 7 years later, out of the blue, they got a phone call from a former U.S. official who had evidence David is still alive. This case sounds like a Hollywood movie, but evidence doesn't lie. So where is David Snedden? Famous rugby player and Celebrity X Factor contestant Levi Davis went missing in Barcelona last year while on a backpacking trip through Europe. Just days before he vanished, he posted a 15-minute video to his Instagram account saying his life was in danger and people were after him. After he disappeared, several theories emerged. But what really happened to Levi Davis? Join me, Jamie Beebe, co-host of the popular true crime series Strictly Stalking, as I embark on a brand new adventure combining true crime and travel. Listen to The Last Trip wherever you get your podcasts.